Oh, there it is. All right, welcome everyone to WCC Wednesday. I'm Peder Johanson, the volunteer coordinator for Afghan refugee response at the Wisconsin Council of Churches. Brianna is with us today, but she's behind the scenes. So I'll be walking us through the time today. Thank you all for joining us. And we have a special guest today, an old friend of mine. Krista and I go back a long time, and so it's been fun to have our paths cross again with all of this. But Krista Zimmerman is a pastor in Racine, and she and her church and some other churches have been doing some work with LSS, Lutheran Social Services, and refugee resettlement in their community. And so Krista has been kind enough to spend some time with us this afternoon and just share a little bit about her story. So Krista, welcome. Why don't we start? Just tell us a little bit about your ministry context and what the journey has been like for your community and how you came to the decision to do some resettlement work in Racine.
Sure. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. It is so nice to be reunited like this. It really is a small world. So I'm glad to be on. Thanks for the opportunity. My church is Mel Pleasants Lutheran Church, which is in Racine, Wisconsin. And we are like right on the border of Mount Pleasant and Racine. So, and also notably, we are called the Spaceship Church. Our legal name is Mel Pleasants Lutheran Church, but the Spaceship Church is what everybody in town calls us because our building is looks like a flying saucer. So it's supposed to look like the crown of thorns, but to most people it just looks like a spaceship. So so spaceshipchurch.org is our website. It's our handle on every social media. So yeah.
You have a tagline, it's out of this world.
Oh, we should have that.
You can use that.
Unfortunately. Yeah. Yes. Oh, my favorite personally is what people think it is if they didn't know it was a church. We used to have a sign that was like the Jesus fish. And so somebody thought that it was an aquarium. I was like, that's amazing. So I've been there for 7.5 years, and our journey with resettlement kind of started back in 2015, 16, with the Syrian refugee crisis. There was a small group of us who had gotten together to say, is this something that we would be wanting to look into? And even Mary from Lutheran Social Services came down and talked to us about it. And unfortunately, it just didn't really take off. But we had that inkling back then. So then fast forward to this past summer when Afghanistan was taken over by the Taliban and people needed to get out quick. And we heard the stories of all of these people fleeing to the United States and other countries around the world. And even here in Wisconsin to Fort McCoy. So we were moved to help. It just started with a few people saying, what can we do? What is the Lutheran Church doing? How can we support people? And our congregation is very generous with money and collecting things. So naturally, we started off in that direction. In September, we took a special offering for a Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service, kind of the national partner. And then, early fall 2021, we started talking about could we co-sponsor a family or an individual, whoever God might be sending our way if it works out. And to be honest, if you remember back then, things were constantly changing. We were hearing, one thing today, another thing tomorrow, they would be able to have a work permit. They wouldn't. They're getting money from the government. They're not. So there was a lot of confusion about what was going on. But about November, we had kind of gotten a critical mass of some people who came together and started going to or attending the Zoom trainings that LSS was putting on, just to kind of see what would co-sponsorship mean for us. What would we need to do? So then I found out that a few other Lutheran congregations in Racine were also considering doing co-sponsorship. So we started talking together, and we actually ended up with us, so Mel Pleasant Lutheran Church, Lutheran Church of the Resurrection, and Covenant Presbyterian. So it's also an ecumenical thing, which is really cool. Yeah. So the three of our churches now have a group of about 30 volunteers who are waiting for our background checks and volunteer forms to be cleared. We've all kind of gone through some orientation online, and we need to go through a longer orientation as a group before we can be assigned a family. So it's been kind of a slow process, but it's also just been, they're really overwhelmed. Lutheran Social Services is so overwhelmed, and co-sponsorship in Racine is kind of a new thing. There has been other churches who have co-sponsored refugee families recently, like in the last 20 years, but it was more than 20 years ago, the last time Mel Pleasant did that, did co-sponsor a refugee family. So all the resources for Lutheran Social Services are really in Milwaukee. That's where the office is. That's where, they have apartments that they kind of like just, use for people who need a place right away. There's established churches. And so some of that was just like seeing how can we also resettle down here. So we have our like coalition of three, which we call the Racine Resettable Ministry. And then we also work with Racine Interfaith Coalition. So they are they're the Wisdom affiliate in Racine. Okay. Yeah. So they have been helping a lot with procuring housing. So we actually, a really cool story. So we had some housing that was looking like it was going to work out. It was actually the retired police chief who owns some buildings around Racine. And he's like, this one is going to be ready pretty soon. And so the week before Christmas, me and a couple other people went and took a look at it, and it was like, oh, this would be good. It kind of meets the requirements, close to public transportation, close to a grocery store, close to our churches. I mean, that's not a requirement, but it was a nice thing. So we had, kind of a handshake agreement. And then it happened to be that another co-sponsor team of two churches, their housing fell through like the day before they were going to move. So like they had everything ready to like load a truck. They had trucks rented, they had people, and then the night before, something happened where it fell through. So Racine Interfaith Coalition then put out this alert, like, oh my gosh, these churches were ready
now. Yeah,
we need something now. So it was really cool because the lay leadership of our group kind of came together really quick and said, hey, what can we do to help with this? And so we like gave our housing to them. That's because awesome. They had somebody. Yeah. So awesome. That's
great. And I know housing is such a challenge. I mean, it really is everywhere for everybody. But talking with the resettlement agencies around the state, I mean, it is the number one holdup, that's slowing things down is finding housing that's affordable and safe and meets all those requirements. And so really a treasure to have something lined up. So that's not that's not a small deal to step away from that to help out your neighbors. And that's, I just think, a beautiful witness of what this work in ministry is about. And that this is one of the downsides of having multiple groups within a community doing resettlement, is that they're competing with each other often for that valuable resource. So good for you all.
Yeah. I had nothing to do with it. I found out about it afterwards, and I was so proud. So yeah. Yep.
That's great. So do you have some other options coming forward with housing? Yeah.
So Racine Interfaith Coalition has so many good partners in the community who are really active in helping us out, and they're
Mhm.
also working with different employers around town who would be willing to hire folks. And so they're a great partner. They're really doing a lot.
Yeah. Have you
So
all worked with them before? Is this kind of a new relationship with the resettlement ministry?
yeah, yes, it's kind of new. It's kind of new for them even. Like they
Mhm.
have been doing stuff with immigration for a long time. And our synod, Greater Milwaukee Synod, also of the ELCA,
Mhm.
also kind of works together with there's another pastor in town who is kind of like the volunteer coordinator for their immigration and refugee service group. And so it's like the synod and Racine Interfaith Coalition and other partners too, but we've been able to like plug into that partnership. So Racine Interfaith has been around for a long time, and that we've done things with them, but our church isn't actually a member of theirs. But the other two churches are. It's not that we can't work with them without being members, but
Mhm.
just that this really gives us an opportunity to work with them in a new way. So
Yeah,
and hopefully become more official partners with them in the future. So
that's great. And not only is it such a great ministry to new neighbors that are coming in, but you're developing some new partnerships with the ecumenical community, and developing some new relationships and outreach with the larger community. And I wonder too, we're coming out of 2 very difficult years. And I know that so many churches are feeling disconnected, and so many things kind of had to just stop for a long time, and it's maybe been kind of hard to get get that sense of like we're doing things together. And so I hope that doing something like this, which is a major project and obviously takes a lot of commitment and buy-in from a lot of people and a lot of cooperation, but I can imagine it's going to be good for all of you in your congregations to have something you can really sink your teeth into and do some work together. Have you found that so far? What has that experience been like for your members?
yeah, I think you're totally right on all that. I know that like I said, our congregation is super generous with money and donating things, and so we've raised a ton of money. Like we have more money than we need, which maybe I shouldn't say that on Facebook, but
Generosity is a good thing.
it is
Yeah.
a good thing. It is a good thing. So, people were, really happy to give to this effort. And also, people who have wanted to get involved in something more meaningful have really gotten in to have joined the volunteer team in a way that like they're going to be hands-on and getting to know the family or the people who come to us eventually. But it's also been good. Well, I another thing that I think is really cool about it is there's a lot of different levels people can enter into this ministry, because there is the need for some money, and there is the need for people who can drive the family, help them with ESL, bring them to the grocery store, bring them to the Middle Eastern grocery store in Milwaukee. But then there's also people who once we get our house, get our family, we're going to need lots of stuff to fill that house. And I know that will come out of these 3 congregations.
Yeah.
It's more like we're going to have to pare it down. Because already for months, people call me every once in a while. They're like, I have a couch. I have this. I have this. Like, you can hang on to it for an indefinite amount of time. But I know that things will be there. So,
Yeah. Yep.
So I do think that it's brought some hope into the congregation, and also, I think our congregation, as well as the other 2 congregations, are really excited about the idea of cooperating together. It started off kind of like, I've got a few people, you've got a few people, you've got a few people. and now coming together, and and recently also like the pastors kind of got this started, and now we've kind of handed it over to a committee of lay folks, and we're kind of like just there for support. And that's really exciting too. I think people like are excited to dig into it. It has been hard to keep momentum, just because like there have been so many starts and stops, but we're just trying to trust the process. So
that's so great. Wonderful. Thank
yeah.
you so much for the work that you're doing. Thanks for sharing it with us. Before
you.
we wrap this up, I know that a lot of congregations, a lot of communities have been thinking about this for a long time, like your congregation, right? I mean, refugee resettlement is not anything new, and it is something that we've been talking about as a nation for the last several years, unfortunately, with numbers declining and then being brought back up, and obviously the situation in Syria and other places around the world. So I know a lot of folks have been talking about it for a long time, maybe have been kind of thinking about it, but not quite ready to take that step. And obviously, since the evacuation of Afghanistan, that has sort of shed some new light on this, and people are feeling connected to the crisis in new ways. Perhaps they have a connection with military, with veterans, and are feeling a sense of responsibility, perhaps, to do something.
Yeah.
So as we have a lot of people out there that may be having this conversation, I wonder if you have any words for them, whether that's just pastoral encouragement or advice. And you don't have to get into the nitty gritty about how to connect with LSS. We did a WCC Wednesday maybe a month or two ago with someone from LSS. So people can refer back to that, or you can check out their website at lsswis.org. And they have a page on there about refugee resettlement. But to finish us up, Pastor Krista, give us a good word.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a labor of love. Like, I think one of Jesus' most basic messages was, welcome the stranger. Because who among you has not been a stranger? And Jesus himself was a refugee. So there's so many connections with our faith, and I would also say, like, the partnership thing, we're doing it with multiple churches, it's not easy, but it's totally worth it, because there are a lot of churches that are smaller who say, like, well, we can't afford to do this, or we don't have enough people to do this, and we're like kind of a medium congregation, and I feel like anybody can benefit from that, like, partnership with other churches.
You don't have to do this alone. That's so important. And I know that LSS does a lot of things in Milwaukee, and so obviously a lot of the burden falls on Milwaukee congregations, but a lot of them aren't necessarily in a place to take on the full co-sponsorship. And so that's something we've been talking about, and LSS has been talking about, that if you're not in Milwaukee, maybe there's an opportunity that you can support a congregation that is, so that they don't have to do it alone. So just another option for people to think about.
Yes, for sure. That's awesome.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for your time and for listening. And again, Pastor Krista, thank you.
Well, thank you.